It's come around to that time of year again where uh, I'm preparing for another season. This I've worked out will be my 22nd year playing Premier Cricket. I've had more than 22 seasons because I went and did 4 seasons abroad playing in the UK while I was living in New Zealand. So a little more than 22 seasons, but 22 years. This will be 22 years playing Premier Cricket, and that's uh, kind of scary when you think about it. Half of our first 11 at Civil Service North would not be 22 years of age. So it's funny to think that, and it's not a fact that I've brought up with the boys just yet. Um, so, in the process of planning out some training for myself over the coming weeks, we're about 4 weeks into pre-season. We've had one session a week for the last 4 weeks, and we've got a couple more before hopefully being able to move outside. Weather here has been great. It's been pretty dry, although as I say it, we've got probably the most rain we've had in a few weeks happening right now, even though it's still quite a light rain. So fingers crossed we get the types of conditions that allow the groundsmen to get the necessary work done to their grounds in order to set us up for a good start to the season. The last 2 seasons here have been quite wet in sort of March and April time, and that's really interrupted groundsmen's ability to have our grounds ready for the first competitive match in the Premier League, which is always the final Saturday in April. We've actually started later into the season, so we've actually started in May, I believe, the last couple of years. So fingers crossed, things are boding well for a dry start to the season as a batsman. Probably not what bowlers want to hear, but fingers crossed we get something a little bit different to what we've had the last couple of years, and we can set the season up to be a big one from a run scoring perspective. I have some goals I'm trying to hit in terms of outcomes, but most importantly, I know that I'm not going to achieve those unless I get clear around the types of um, daily, weekly, monthly goals that I want to tick off with my game. A couple of technical things I'm working on, introducing a new shot, and making sure my mentality is right in order to give myself the best chance of making the big scores I want to score. So, with that in mind, a number of thoughts across my mind at this time of year, and one of them was, and it seems to be a prevailing theme, geez, I wish I knew a lot of this stuff when I was 19 or, insert age, a lot younger than what I am now. So I thought I'd write a blog, writing down some of them. Now, I've called it 19 Truths About Batting. I wish I knew as the New Zealand Under 19 captain. I've actually written down 23. So there's a few extras in there, a few bonus ones just to keep you on your toes. Now, first one, a low score doesn't mean you're shit. It just means you have work to do. So I definitely took getting out to heart when I was younger. I thought it was a reflection on me personally. I had a real lack of ability to separate performance with my overall happiness in life. So fantastic when it was going well, but as I'm sure you're well aware, uh, we probably succeed 20 to 30% of our innings, right? Um, if you're a top player, maybe closer to 40. But realistically, we're failing often, and it doesn't mean that you're any less of a human being or that you're a rubbish player. These low scores happen. Just means that you've got work to do. Number two, when you feel out of your depth, it's a sign that you need to work on that part of your game. So the example I want to refer to here was my first class debut. I came into the match on the back of some really good form for my club, and in fact, 2 days prior, I'd scored 97 off 42 balls in a T20, chasing 200 against Warringstown at Warringstown. It was one of the best innings I played. I was able to access instinct and attacking instinct really effectively, um, to the point where coming into a first class fixture, I hadn't done any training to prepare to open the batting against a red ball, a duke ball at that, against guys who played first-class cricket in England, had played Test cricket for Ireland. It was a real challenge. The ball swung a lot, and my hands were incredibly hard because 2 days previous I was still batting as though I was playing in a T20 match, chasing 200, and I wasn't able to stop myself. It was like my body was on autopilot, which works well some days. On this occasion, I just looked like an absolute fool, and instinct was taking over. I couldn't control it, and in my first 4 first-class innings, I made 15 runs. The feedback I got from the coach was basically, "What on earth are you doing batting like that? That's not how you batted all throughout the winter." And I guess, from my perspective, was having to let him know that, look, my instincts are completely attuned to playing T20 cricket right now, and it was my first real experience of that being the case, where I was basically in the best T20 form I'd ever experienced. I'd scored 100 in a 50 over game before then. I was just in a rich vein of form, but it was not lined up for first class 3-day cricket. So, yeah, I took it to heart, as I talk about doing often. Felt really bad about myself. Just thought, what am I doing? I'm working full time. I'm a long way off the level that these bowlers are at. I can't do this. I just don't have the time to devote to the training required to make the necessary changes to be able to be up to speed in order to give myself the best chance of success. Thankfully, I was getting lifts with Shane Getcate. He had enough experience to know that that wasn't a true indication of who I am as a player. He said, you just need to work on it. And I didn't agree with him at the time because I was still very emotional driving home and just felt really embarrassed about how I'd batted in 4 innings. But I thought about it and I thought, you know what, I've got to do it. I went away and made some changes to both my training regime. I got some new balls, thanks to Simon Johnston, the Knights coach, got us training with newer balls, facing bowlers all the time with new red balls, and worked on some stump awareness, got back to understanding exactly where my stumps were, and realised that, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the bowler bowl at me. Frustratingly, those first 4 innings were the best tracks we played on all season, so I completely blew the opportunity to make some big scores. And the following pitches we played on did a lot. They were green, they seamed, they swung, and what they meant was I forced the bowler to bowl to me in the end. So it worked out in the end, but once again, you've got to take that information that when you're feeling out of your depth, there's more work to be done. Number 3, when you fail, you're 1 innings closer to succeeding. So just like I said with number 2, bearing in mind that you fail, that's okay. Try not to take it to heart. Don't get too emotional about it. You're 1 innings closer to another big innings. Number 4, you'll have days where you're well below your best. Accept it quickly. Try to learn from it and focus on preparing for your next innings. So just like I said in my first class debut, well below my best from a red ball perspective. I definitely didn't accept it quickly. I stewed on it. However, I think what's important to learn from that is if you have that type of emotion, that frustration, disappointment, embarrassment, you need to redirect it. So it's almost a good thing, even though maybe your initial response isn't always the best. Use that energy that emotion is creating to direct it towards doing the necessary training that will get you up to the level that you need to be. And before doing the training, you need to build a plan. How are you going to up your skill level to ensure that when you're next tested in that way, you're in the best possible position to get through that tricky period when you're facing a swinging ball, a seaming ball, get through that tricky period, play to your strengths, and ultimately get the outcome that you want. So if I knew that as a 19-year-old, we'd be in a much better place. Number 5, a good score doesn't mean you're great. It just means that you had the opposition covered on that particular day. Now, this is a big one. I think one thing's definitely taken me too long to learn is that it's best to not get too low when things are going poorly for you and not get too high when things are going well for you. That's one thing I definitely struggled with over the years. Is there would be some games where I'd play an innings that I was really proud of, and it meant that I just didn't have the level of motivation to back that up in the next innings or 2, 3 innings. It was almost as though I needed to fail in order to be on high alert, to have the necessary desire to want to get through that first 20 balls, to fight in the way that you need to sometimes in some innings when it's not going your way, to not just give it away, to not just try and release the pressure playing an attacking shot that's just not on in the conditions or against that type of bowler, to just bed in, play the percentages, bat long, and the result takes care of itself. That certainly took me a long time to learn. Number 6, the shit that comes out of opposition's mouths is more a reflection on them than you. So, as a 19-year-old playing club cricket against men, I first started as an 18-year-old, so that sort of 2-year period I was playing club cricket in Auckland. And because I'd been promoted as a junior player, playing men's club cricket, but also coming through the age groups, some opponents took it upon themselves to make sure I knew that in the pecking order I was very low down the pecking order, well below them. And that really hurt me. Some of the comments that they made, I remember playing club nationals once after the 2006 Under-19 Cricket World Cup, where I'd scored very few runs. The team had performed, well and truly underperformed. And one particular opponent, when I got out, laughed at me and said, an absolute shambles, just like the World Cup. And it echoed around the ground, and it just really stuck with me, and it really broke me. I felt really shit. I felt like I was a rubbish player, and yeah, I found that hard to come back from. There are many other times where guys have got stuck into me, maybe on a day where I just haven't had the skill set required to deal with the bowling, and I felt out of my depth. I've played and missed numerous times and not had a formula to go back to or a technique to go back to that allowed me to be confident in the fact that if I just worked through this tricky period, eventually I could come out on top. I didn't have that resilience as a 18, 19-year-old. I guess few do. So once again, I actually I realized how impactful those comments could be, and probably into my mid-20s, I was an advocate of sledging. I would talk as much as possible in the field to try and put a batsman off. It's kind of embarrassing when I admit to it now, and if there's anyone out there who played against me who I did sledge, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, how you just sound like an idiot at the end of the day, and looking back, you realise that what a waste of energy. Some of it for me was actually trying to stay involved in the game because I don't bowl that often. So it was a matter of like trying to compete every ball and stay as focused as possible, as make sure my levels of concentration are strong. I feel you have to do that when you're sledging because you can't make a mistake. If you're talking in the field, you make a mistake, you look like an absolute idiot. That was one of the reasons I did it, but ultimately it was because I probably didn't feel that great about myself at that particular point in my life. I didn't like how my career was panning out. Probably fair to say I was unhappy, and ultimately used it as a way to, take my feelings out on opponents in the middle in the hope that they would feel bad themselves, make a mistake, get out, and then it would be one ball closer to me batting. So, as I said, I learned my lesson eventually. Decided to stop sledging, just focus on being the best I can be in the field, and then also trying to learn as many lessons as I can to take into my batting innings. Number 7, facing a bowler is like a game of chess. Whichever square the bowler lands the ball in, you need to have a solution for. If that solution is a dot ball, that's okay. But the more squares on the board you can hit boundaries from, the better. So I hope this analogy sort of brings it to life for you, and you get an image in your mind of ultimately it is a bit of a game of chess. I wish I knew this when I was 19, because I then would have structured my training a little bit more to focus on, right, how can I prepare for the bowler's best ball? The ball's maybe swinging and seaming. It hits that channel in and around off stump. I'm not sure whether I can play or leave. I'm not sure whether I can drive, whether it's going to take my outside edge. Practicing all those different types of deliveries so that I have answers for them, so practicing them in training so that in the middle I have answers for them, it would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of frustration. I think so. Definitely something I'm aware of now, and that definitely enhances my preparation at the moment. But something that would have gone a long way to making me a better player a lot earlier had I learned the lesson. Number 8, dealing with pace bowling is simply a matter of exposing yourself to high speeds. So I feel really fortunate that I grew up playing age group cricket against some decent bowlers who bowled 130 to 145 kph maybe. We had a guy, Tiahu Davis, who was very quick as a youngster, incredible athlete. Played a little bit of first class cricket for Northern Districts. Unfortunately, didn't have a long career, but was a talent growing up. And I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder as a youngster, and I tried to prove a point by not wearing a helmet to him at about the age of 13, 14. Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, the idea of trying to be macho when I look back on it now. That's ultimately what I was trying to do. Oddly, he never bowled me a bouncer, and I've never spoken to him about this, but one of his old teammates said to me he believed it was because he'd hit someone in the head one day and injured them quite badly, and he felt really bad about that. So that's the case, Tiahu. You're a bigger man than me, mate, being able to do that. And control your urges to bump the life out of me for not wearing a lid to you. We also faced Tim Southey a lot. Now, he was never express pace, but a decent pace. And it was interesting because what I found coming into club cricket and playing alongside men as a teenager still, these men in club cricket didn't face guys of that pace that often. So when they would talk to me about facing the particular bowler in an upcoming match, they would mention pace, and I would say, "Well, no, it's not too bad." And once again, I didn't know at the time, but all it was they didn't face those guys bowling 130 to 140 too often, so that pace was uncomfortable for them. Thankfully, I was used to it. Hamish Bennett would be another one. He was up around that sort of 140 mark, which I played more against in my later age group years. Never enjoyed facing him in the indoor nets, and then playing club cricket with Andy Mackay, facing him in the indoor nets, Mitch McLennan in the indoor nets, not fun. Just angling into that rib cage and tickling the ribs was never a fun experience. So once again, getting that regular training against guys with pace can really help you out in the middle when you're uncomfortable based on a guy's speed. There are times in my career, again, especially in the later days of my career, where I haven't been facing pace much. So a guy bowling 130 kph has rushed me because I just haven't done enough training recently in order to prepare for that. So once again, just prepare yourself for the type of pace you're going to get in a game. Very similar point is number 9. So get outside your comfort zone in training. If you're always comfortable in training, how are you going to deal with being uncomfortable in the middle? So once again, it just plays into the previous point I made with number 8. Number 10, ask your teammates and opponents how they're trying to get you out. It's the fastest route to building your training plan and improving your game. Now, this is something I would not have had the confidence to do as a teenager, but I decided to do it when I moved back to Northern Ireland and I was training in the winter of 2017-18 with the Northern Knights squad. I just said, look, how are you guys trying to get me out? I just thought, look, this is my final crack at playing professional cricket. I want to leave no stone unturned, and if it means making myself uncomfortable in training, this would be one way to do it. What it did was it meant that I could prepare with even more confidence in terms of working out how a bowler, like a left-arm spinner, was he trying to hit me on the pad? Was he trying to get me stumped, bring me out of my crease, etc.? When you know how they're trying to get you out, you've got a better idea and you can try and put pressure back on them. Number 11, the 4 pillars of the game: technical, tactical, mental, and physical, all need to be worked on consistently each week in order for you to improve. So I've talked about this at length in some previous pods that I've done, but it's only in later life, as I said, that I've realized just how important this is. Breaking down the game into these 4 pillars and identifying what types of actions you can take for each of these 4 pillars to continue to improve, to continue to enhance your skill set, your fitness levels, your mental game, your overall resilience as a player. What can you be doing on a daily, weekly basis to just continue to improve? Number 12, think in compounds. Now, this is something I've taken from my personal interest in personal finance is compounding. So by training one of the four key pillars today and stacking training up day after day, the benefits of that consistency is limitless. So the idea from a personal finance investing perspective is that compounding interest, according to Einstein, was the eighth wonder of the world. When you get interest on interest, the compounding is exponential, and that's the idea I would try and utilize if I was 19 again. Is if I do one thing today that's going to make me a better player, I do the same again tomorrow, the following day. You think by the end of the month, by the end of the season, you think how good you can be and how many benefits you can gain on the back of just having that mentality. Number 13, ask yourself each day, how am I getting better today? Plays into probably the last two that I've referred to there. So, once again, just trying to ask yourself that simple question: what's the one thing that I can do today to give myself the best chance of success in my next innings? Number 14, superstitions are meaningless. Don't waste time and energy on them. I spent a lot of time and energy on these over the years. I remember my sister at one point wasn't able to come and watch me bat because supposedly I thought whenever she turned up, I would get out, and it's just ludicrous. And I feel bad because I look back now as an adult and someone who has a really close relationship with my sister. It was harsh, obviously, putting that on her, but also like I wish now that she's not able to watch me, she doesn't have much interest in watching. I wish I made the time that she was watching more enjoyable for her. So that was a bit unfair of me, but yeah, it could be what undies you're wearing, whether you put your left pad on first, all that stuff. If they work with your routine, sure, I get that that's part of your preparation, but at the same time, we want to be resilient. And if you're in a scenario where you're unable to, um, you know, follow through on your routine or process your routine because one of these things is out of place, the last thing you want is feeling as though you won't be able to perform because your sister's turned up or you weren't able to wash the pair of undies that you like to wear. Those types of things. Yeah. Energy is better spent in other areas. Number 15, speak to batsmen who you respect and ask them what do they think about during their innings and how do they maintain concentration. So if there's somebody in your club team, somebody in your school team, whatever uh, you know stage of the game you're at, maybe on someone on social media who's maybe doing an Ask Me Anything, ask them what it is that they think about in terms of a mental routine. We can do all the training we want. We can be the best net batsman possible, but if we don't have an ability to switch our mind off to focus on the ball coming down at you, ball after ball after ball, then we're just simply never going to make those big scores that we want to in order to progress our game, in order to make those teams that we're hoping to be selected in. Number 16, a mental routine is well worth the time invested in developing one. Playing into the point I just made, that whole mental routine, working out what others do, working out maybe what sounds good to you, and just get a really simple routine. It might be 3 steps. It might be stepping into your stance, uh, putting one foot either side of the line, tapping your bat twice, looking up, facing the bowler, doing a diaphragmatic breath as the bowler runs into bowl to calm and relax you, and to just tell yourself, watch the seam, watch the seam, watch the seam. Whatever process you go through, that's the bulk of what I do. Yeah, put the time into developing it, practice it in the nets and training, get used to it, make it a habit. Even now, as a 38-year-old, I don't have to practice it that often. I've just done it often enough now that it's ingrained in me. That's what I do. And that's the point you want to get to, ideally, as a 19, 20-year-old. For sure, it might, you might make some slight tweaks, some slight changes as your career progresses. That's the nature of the beast. But having one is well worth the time invested. Number 17, master the pull shot. It forces the bowler to bowl fuller. Yes, in most cases it will. Some cases the bowler might see it as an opportunity to get you out somebody who's confident in their ability to bowl a really good bumper. Maybe they've got a little bit extra pace. Um, if you play it well, it can score you a lot of runs. Yes, of course. If you play it and you make a mistake, it has potential to get you out, of course. But ultimately, if you've got the back foot covered, the bowler most of the time is forced to just work out, right, I need to bowl fuller, and hopefully that once again plays into another one of your strengths. Number 18, stretching is the key to staying on the park. Do it every day. Stretching for me, and I imagine most people, has been one of those things that the more time I put into it, the better I've got at it, and the more benefits I've seen from it. So, what is your own experience with stretching? Uh, Cricket's a difficult game in that it requires explosive speed, um, which means you fatigue, and you're also on the park for potentially 7 hours a day. Takes a lot out of you. If you can manage, maintain your muscles, look after them, you're going to give yourself a better chance of success. Number 19, never be satisfied. Your aim should be to leave the pitch with the umpires, right? 100 is not enough. Your job as a batsman is to be there when your team wins the game. So just because you've reached 100, don't be satisfied. What's the next aim once you reach 100? Right, is it your high score for that particular team in that particular league? Is it 150? Have you got time for 200? Continually push your limits because, as Brendan McCullum said after he scored his 300 for New Zealand, he didn't believe it was something that he could achieve. He just simply didn't think he could bat for that long. But ultimately, he wasn't satisfied. He had a job to do for New Zealand. He just kept batting and batting, and the 300 just arrived for him. Number 20, visualize doing well against all opponents. It's a cheat code for consistent level of confidence. So if you've watched a few of my pods, you'll probably know by now I'm a huge advocate of this. It's something we don't do enough. In my opinion, it is a cheat code. It's something I've already started doing a little bit of, and I'll be doing more of a month out from the season now. If it's raining, you can't hit balls. It's the next best thing to prepare yourself for an innings. Give it a try. Number 21, every innings you have the chance to find some rhythm. If you don't find it early, just hang in there, watch the ball, breathe, trust your instinct. It will come. I'm not sure there's more I can say about that, but if I knew that at an earlier age, who knows where I could have gone. 22, becoming a top professional batsman takes time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So this is the idea of aspirationally becoming a top professional batsman, right? You're not going to achieve everything you want to achieve in the next week or month. It's going to take time, and this plays into, once again, what's one thing I can do today to become a better player? Right, our final one, number 23. Use your analytical mind to assist you in reflecting on your performances, identifying what needs to improve, and map out a path towards being a more well-rounded player. Use that energy you have with the disappointment from an innings. Try and learn from it, take down some notes, identify where you can be better, and then map out a path for your training to work out how you can be better. If you don't know, ask a senior player, ask a coach, ask people online who you value their opinion of to help you map out a training plan for how you can succeed, because that's going to give you a better chance of success at the end of the day. Right, there's 23 from me. Are there any that you liked? Are there any that you thought, nah, not for me? What would be in your list?